You had these nonsensical things coming out of, well, we've got a massive organization created by the city manager already. We've got a massive bunch of organizations created by 8 city councilors. Their friends work together with the city manager to lie about the city government to fool you into thinking we have a responsible city government. One of the most blatant outrages right now is the situation on Magazine Beach, where you've got these hypocrites involved in heartless animal abuse, who have been involved in heartless animal abuse for 10 years now. Actually, 6 years now. They started starving the White Geese in 2004. And they had the nerve to call themselves pro-environment. Before that, you had all sorts of various destructions. You had the vote to destroy their food, Magazine Beach, in fall of, I think it was actually December of 1999. Shortly after that, in 2001, this nut started running around killing mother geese on their nests. Responsible people begged the Cambridge City Council to stand up to this outrage. The Cambridge City Council responded with the wink and a nod, which is normal from villains, quietly supporting villains. They were neutral on something they had no business being neutral on. In November of that year, the nut, who'd been beating beautiful geese to death while they were nesting their young, apparently graduated to rape and murder of a young woman. City Council spent an hour discussing that rape and murder. City Council did not want to know where the rape and murder occurred. He raped that young woman under the largest tree in the nesting area, which has since been denuded of all its grass by the DCR's agents, the Charles River Conservancy. He then, or his friend, one or the other, I forget the details, forced her up onto the Grand Junction Railroad Bridge and killed her. I think she was stabbed to death. These guys are now serving 30 years. But these vile city councilors who egged this person on with their neutrality when they should have been standing up against them spent an hour discussing the rape and murder of this young woman at the nesting area of the Charles River White Geese. They spent an hour not wanting to know where she was raped and murdered. They discussed this rape and murder for an hour and didn't want to know where the rape and murder occurred. And we had been telling them for 6 months a year, stand up to this vile person. Object to the beating deaths of these beautiful animals. And with the typical rottenness of the Cambridge City Council, they didn't want to know about it. And they supported the beating deaths of these nesting geese with a silence that said everything. And then when what looks like the person who beat those beautiful animals to death raped and murdered, or was a leader of the rape and murder of a young woman in exactly the same location, they spent an hour discussing it and did not want to know where that woman was raped and murdered. Councilor Davis was the only person who said where she was raped and murdered. She said it, she swallowed her words, she looked around guiltily, and then she joined the rest of the hypocrites and not wanting to know where that young woman was raped and murdered. Now in this year, these hypocrites have gone so far as to, well, it's the same thing as the situation over at the library. The city council destroyed 23 100-year-old trees for buildings that should have been placed in the corner of Ellery and Broadway. these hypocrites, these agents, undisclosed agents of the city manager fought for, calling themselves the Neighborhood Association. And then they stabbed their backstabbers in the back by putting the library building as the obvious phase 2 of this irresponsible project. A library building which was claimed to be needed because the old library was too small, and which has less shelf space than the old library. What's going on? You've got a city government which has contempt for the environment, that's all. Nothing complicated about it. What's going on in the Charles? You've got a city government which has contempt for the environment. And by the way, a whole bunch of architects who are in a class, can't say the individuals were, and certainly at no time was there any guarantee that we're going to pay you off by giving you this project. You simply have a bunch of architects getting a whole big bunch of money for building a building which should not have been built there. 2 buildings. The first one had been responsibly put on the corner of Elway and Broadway. The architects would have gotten a lot of money, but they wouldn't have had the second piece of the pie. The destruction of this Judas money, this grass that was given to Bick and his buddies in place of the 100-year-old trees. It's the same game on the Charles River. Anybody looking at Magazine Beach who was a responsible individual, not associated with our extremely vile city government, anybody looking at Magazine Beach could see no need to quote-unquote improve a Magazine Beach. This was first announced in 1997 at the Radisson Hotel, whatever they called it then. They asked the public what the public wanted. What the public said, well, the top of the hill might be nice. But there's no sense in doing anything at Magazine Beach. So naturally, since there's more money involved, the city council destroyed Magazine Beach. The city council put in this bizarre wall of introduced bushes. And I use the word city council with great caution, because I know the city council has been protected with all sorts of lovely maneuvers with money. Now you're going to pay for this, I'll pay for this. Nonsense. It's one project. It was described as one project. In 1999, when the city manager pointed out the money that the city council was spending on Magazine Beach, pointed out that there's a whole bunch more going in on Memorial Drive. And that includes destruction of hundreds of trees. Heartless animal use, bizarre dumping of poisons on Magazine Beach to feed sickly grass, which had no business on the banks of the Charles, which replaced perfectly good grass that lived there for the better part of a century. And 9 city councilors have the nerve, 8 city councilors have the nerve to claim this for environment. It's very difficult when you're talking with people with the Charles River, when you're talking about people about the behavior of those 8 hypocrites. The immediate response is they would never stoop so low. Why the response? They would never stoop so low. When you talk about the state, you can prove blatant lies. The state spent 10 years saying they would do no harm to the Charles River White Geese. And then they explain that, as far as they're concerned, starving them and destroying their habitat is not harming. But the hypocrites in the city council, they play these con games. One con game, last spring, a unanimous city council voted to destroy 17,000 square feet of densely grown trees so that the DCR could build a highway. The city council voted to exempt themselves from public hearing requirements so the DCR could build a highway. And so the city council could lie that they're pro-environment. The next week, city council suddenly decided to look into street trees. They had destroyed non-street trees. They suddenly decided to look into street trees. And ever since, their front people been yelling about street trees. How dare you talk about the destruction of 17,000 square feet of densely developed trees? They might possibly protect street trees, possibly. And the city council was back down on that. All of a sudden, the same people who were talking about protecting street trees are talking about doing studies to make sure that diseased street trees are properly cared for. And the same people sure do look like undisclosed representatives of somebody.